The Friday evening crowd at Maple Street Diner was lively, with the comforting sound of silverware clinking against plates and the low murmur of conversations filling the warm, golden-lit space. Families, couples, and solo diners found comfort in the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling burgers, the kind of place where the chaos of the outside world seemed to pause. At a corner booth near the window sat Daniel Carter, a man in his mid-30s with tired eyes but a kind smile. Across from him, his 8-year-old daughter Lily was bent over a coloring sheet, her small fingers gripping a crayon tightly as she carefully filled in the petals of a sunflower. To anyone watching, they looked like just another father-daughter pair enjoying dinner together. But for Daniel, these little moments were everything. It had been 3 years since his wife, Emily, passed away suddenly in a car accident. Life had split open that day, leaving him with grief so heavy it sometimes felt impossible to carry. But Lily had given him purpose, a reason to keep waking up in the morning. He promised himself he'd do everything he could to give her a life filled with stability, safety, and love, even if it meant sacrificing his own dreams. Tonight was one of their traditions, Friday night dinners at the diner. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Their food had just arrived when the restaurant doors swung open with a bang that made forks freeze in midair. A young woman stumbled inside, her face pale and her chest heaving as though she had been running. She couldn't have been more than 24 or 25, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes darting around desperately for safety. 2 men entered right behind her. Their presence changed the energy of the entire room in an instant. One was tall and broad-shouldered, his jaw set in a scowl, the other was leaner but with a mean, restless energy in his movements. Their voices were sharp and low as they closed in on her, cutting off her path to the counter. The chatter in the diner died. Customers looked away, unwilling to get involved. The staff hesitated, whispering nervously to each other, unsure of what to do. Daniel felt Lily's hand slip into his. Her small fingers were trembling. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice thin with fear, "what's happening?" Daniel's chest tightened. He had learned to pick his battles since becoming a single dad, to avoid unnecessary risks. But as he watched the woman press herself against the counter, trapped by 2 men whose gestures grew more threatening with each passing second, he felt something shift inside him. He looked down at Lily. What would she remember if he stayed seated? Would she remember her father as the man who turned away when someone needed help? Or would she remember him as the man who stood up, even when it was hard, even when it was frightening? Taking a slow breath, Daniel rose from the booth. "Hey," he called out, his voice calm but carrying across the diner. "Leave her alone." The taller man turned toward him, a smirk spreading across his face. "What's it to you?" Daniel moved forward, his body acting before his brain could second-guess him. "It's my business now," he said firmly, positioning himself between the woman and the men. He could feel his pulse racing, but he kept his stance strong. The leaner man laughed darkly. "Big hero, huh? You should sit back down before you regret it." Behind him, Lily's small voice carried, "Daddy, be careful." Daniel clenched his jaw. He had worked construction for years, his body still strong despite the exhaustion of single parenthood. But this wasn't about strength, it was about resolve. He straightened his back and looked the men in the eye. "You're not touching her." The room seemed to hold its breath. The taller man stepped closer, his fists curling. For a moment, it looked like violence was inevitable. But then the leaner man muttered, "Not worth it, let's go." With one last threatening glare, they turned and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind them, the bell above it clanging harshly. The silence that followed was thick, then broken by the collective sigh of relief from the diners. The woman's knees gave out, and she nearly collapsed into a chair. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Thank you, I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in." Daniel placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "You don't have to explain. You're safe now." Lily slipped out of the booth, walking over with her coloring sheet in her hand. She held it out to the woman, a bright, imperfect sunflower with a smiling sun in the corner. "Don't cry," she said softly. "You can sit with us if you want." The woman let out a shaky laugh, touched by the simple kindness. She sat down with them, clutching the crayon drawing like it was a lifeline. When the police arrived, she gave her statement. She explained that the men had been following her after she refused their advances outside a nearby bar. They'd cornered her on the street, and she ran into the diner hoping someone would help. After the officers reassured her and promised to investigate, the woman turned back to Daniel. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "You didn't just protect me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You reminded me that there are still good people out there." Daniel nodded, humbled. "We all need to look out for each other," he said simply. As the night wound down and Daniel prepared to take Lily home, the woman hugged him, gratitude shining in her tearful eyes. "You changed everything for me tonight," she whispered. Outside, under the cool night sky, Daniel felt lighter than he had in years. He realized it wasn't just about protecting the woman, it was about showing Lily what courage and compassion looked like in action. As they walked to their car, Lily squeezed his hand. "Daddy," she said, her voice full of awe, "you're my hero." Daniel smiled, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. "No, sweetie," he replied softly. "We were her heroes. You gave her the sunflower, remember?" Lily beamed, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt like he was doing more than just surviving. He was teaching his daughter how to live with courage, compassion, and hope.